Clear prop.
Star 73, Yankee number 2, following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear Sutton. 1 Charlie Bravo, exit in runway 25, going 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and designated pilot examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I am fantastic. This week we're tackling operations at a towered airport. We've done a lot of communicating with ATC people. We've done a lot of conversations around non-towered airports, traffic pattern. We've talked about all of it, but we're going to really highlight the airport environment today, talk about how to get into the airport environment, how to get out of the airport environment, and then really how to plan while we're at that airport environment for sure. You spend a ton of time at towered airports. I think a lot of our listeners probably spend most of their time at a non-towered airport. Big assumption. But we're spending some time in an advisory document that's from the Air Safety Foundation. Find this stuff on the AOPA website. Really good document. Like, I think it's 12 pages. It's literally called Operations at a Towered Airport. So if you don't spend much time at a towered airport, highly recommend that you go out and download the document, and you'll get a lot of the information we're going to share with you today in that document. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the AIM, any other regulation stuff that we found, some information in the PHAC, Pilot Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge, about airport operations, and we're going to hopefully make you a better pilot when you are in a ATC towered airport environment. So, Wally, we spend a ton of time here at a towered airport because we are in Delta airspace here. You do a lot of check rides at this airport. Do you think people are comfortable in an ATC environment at a towered airport?
No, absolutely not. Most people, in fact, I think if you talk to most student pilots, say just for instance, a 15 to 20 hour student pilot, somebody who's maybe done their first solo, they've maybe done their first dual cross country with their instructor, but they haven't done a solo cross country yet. I'll bet if you went to most of them and said, what intimidates you the most about flying? They're probably going to say two things. Number one being stalls, and number two, talking to air traffic control. And, I think what we need to realize is that when you're talking to air traffic control, just make it conversational. In other words, talk to them like you would hold a conversation. So, Bobby, if we were at a dinner party with quite a few people sitting around a dinner table, and I wanted to tell you something, I might say, "Hey, Bobby, I just want to let you know, when I walked by your truck on the way in, I noticed your left rear tire looked like it was low." So I would address you. I would tell you. I would call you by name, and it's basically the same way when you're talking to the tower. You want to address who you're talking to. And, of course, they don't know who you are. So, this could be kind of like a phone conversation. When you call someone on the telephone, they answer the phone. "Hey, Bobby, this is Wally Mulhern. I just want to let you know that this." So, with air traffic control, you tell them who you are. You want to tell them where you are, and when you want to tell them what you want to do. So the conversation may be as simple as XYZ Tower, Skyhawk 123 Bravo Charlie, 15 miles west, inbound for landing, with information Delta. And that's really all you need to tell them.
Yeah, this document, I think I've seen it in other documents on the FAA, called the 4 W's, right? The who you're talking to, who you are, where you are, and what you want to do.
Right.
And I think for new pilots out there, that's a great acronym, or great 4 W's you write down. And as you practice your radio conversations, write it kind of out in that order so that you can read it over and over again and get really, really good at it.
Right.
I can remember when I used to taxi away from here, I would write it down every time before I was leaving. Bunch of different planes, bunch of different letters for weather for ATIS that I'd have to read off, and I would just write the whole thing down and read it to myself before I'd say it. It made me sound like a better pilot, maybe.
Yeah, and if you dig in the back of the AIM where it talks about radio techniques, phraseology, and so forth, another thing it talks about is once you have made that initial contact, you've established a line of communication with air traffic control, you can then not use your full call sign. You can use the last 3 letters or numbers or combination thereof. So going back to the phone call, if I were to call you up, I'm unique in that I have kind of an unusual name. Most people don't know a whole bunch of Wallies. But let's say I had a name like Bill. When I call you up, I would use my first and last name. Hey, this is Bill Mulhern, who that happened to be my father's name. But after we've established the conversation, I think I would expect you to just refer to me as my first name. So it may not sound like a whole lot, but you start to get tongue-tied when you start using a lot of verbiage over the radio. That's why we have a lot of these codes and a lot of, clear for the option means certain things that you need to know. It just eliminates some of the chatter on the radio. Instead of calling yourself Skyhawk 123 Bravo Charlie, you can just call yourself 3 Bravo Charlie. It really saves just a lot of chatter on the radio.
Yes, it definitely does. Obviously, the radios are a big part, and we're going to keep talking about radios throughout the conversation today. There's a number of other things that are unique or exacerbated, maybe a little bit more frequent at towered airports. Some things that we as GA pilots don't have to worry about that others do, maybe at all airports, but definitely at towered airports. There's noise abatement. I've never had to worry about my Cessna 172 creating a noise problem, but at this airport there is some noise abatement guidance in the chart supplement, but probably not for me. It's only for military aircraft. But it's something that people are worried about that are flying in and out of this towered airport. I think towered airports have bigger aircraft, so wake turbulence becomes something that we probably think more about. Sure, yeah. A jet can land at Brenham, Navasota, or other smaller airports around the country and the world, but it's not that common that they're coming in. You're a Cessna following a Warrior. You're not too worried about the damage done. This airport has a lot of helicopter traffic.
Yeah.
I watched a video the other day of a helicopter coming across an airfield and a 150 getting caught up in that wake turbulence and got flipped over.
Yeah, I saw that as well.
Talk about a bad day, man. And it was significantly a long time after the helicopter was there, which was surprising to me. So not something that we're normally thinking about, and not something that happens a lot at remote airfields. Just not a lot of helicopter traffic, but something to consider and think about. I think anytime I've ever been to an airport for the first time, towered or untowered, the airport diagram was a big deal to me. Needed to know, wanted to know, didn't want to look stupid, didn't want to sound stupid. So if you're planning to go to a towered airport, you need to know their operations. You need to know, for me, I'm thinking, are there 2 runways? Because that's going to be a big deal right off the bat. I don't want to cross a runway.
Right.
Probably the first airport I ever went to alone was Galveston. And if you aren't from this part of the country, Galveston's right on the coast down here, always windy, probably stressful for a first-time pilot going down there alone. 3 runways. It's a freaking triangle, right? You can always find a crosswind, and you can pretty much always have a almost into the wind landing at that airport. But no matter where you land, to get back to the FBO, you're probably going to cross 1, if not 2 runways, which is also a whole nother spectrum for a first-time pilot. So you need to know that airport diagram pretty solid, and you need to know, for me, I want to know what is and where is Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie, because every airport's probably got those taxiways.
Yeah.
And you want to know, are you turning left or right, north or south? And you can plan for these things for sure. But in this little document that I referenced, and we'll put a link to this document in the show notes, this airport diagram's beefy. 3 runways, which is really 2 parallel runways with a really big runway that runs diagonally across it, and then 2 taxiways that cross all those runways. So pretty hairy environment to just assume you're going to get there and tool around and not make a mistake, right?
Yeah.
The other planning thing that I would do is really look at what are is there any kind of arrivals, because that's going to tell me how other planes are coming in, again, assuming bigger jets are on arrivals, and know the flow of traffic into that place, and then know some other really important stuff. We talk about radio failures and all that stuff all the time, right? If you're at a non-towered airport, there's 2 things you're probably not too terribly worried about, and that is light gun signals and the tower phone number. Would you agree with that?
Yeah,
Again,
absolutely.
non-towered airport, not too worried about the tower phone number.
That's right.
And light gun signals.
All right.
So if you don't spend a lot of time at a towered field, it'd be very smart for you to have a cheat sheet for light gun signals just in case you lost comms. And it'd be very, very advisable to have the tower's number, right?
Yeah.
Where would you get the tower's number?
It should be in the chart supplement. And worst case situation, if you can't find it, have the phone number for the FBO you're going to go into. I guarantee you can call the FBO and say, hey, I'm out here flying around. I'm 10 miles west of the airport. You have the number for the tower. They can probably help you out.
No doubt. And if they don't, I guarantee they got a radio.
Yeah.
And they're talking to they can probably get in touch with the tower in one way or another. Just simple things. If you use an electronic flight bag, take a screenshot of some light gun signals, have that in your documents somewhere, have that usefully handy for you in the airplane, because those 2 things might not be in your repertoire if you are a regular non-towered airport person.
And something else for the student pilots and for the instructors out there, probably not a bad idea at some point in your training regiment with your student to ask a tower to send you some light gun signals. I can tell you I've never had to really use light gun signals, but I've seen them just from asking the tower to shoot us a green light gun signal. And it's a little bit of training for them, a little exercise for them, but I've never had them deny it. They've always said, yeah, sure.
Never had them deny it here. I think that this is a training tower for the FAA, so they, like you said, I think they kind of like it because they don't have to use them very often either. They're pretty big and beefy.
Yeah.
Wherever you are in the world, in the United States, they've opened up towers for tower tours again, so highly recommend you get out, call your tower, call a local tower, go visit that local tower, ask them to ask a pilot if they can shoot the light gun signals, so you can see it from that perspective. It really is a pretty heavy-duty cannon-looking thing.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of power, big squiggly power cable coming off of it. They have multiples of them up there in the tower, and shoot it at a person that's in the pattern so that they can have an example of what it feels like from the other side. But I always do that at my nighttime currency. When I'm doing my nighttime currency alone or with a flight instructor or a friend, I like to have them shoot my light gun signals at me just so I can see them a little bit easier at night. But those things are bright. You'll see them during the daytime as well. Good practice while you're in the pattern to get a little view of what those things look like. And if you don't fly at a pattern or at a towered airport very often, go to one and get the same treatment so that you can see what those things are like for sure. I bet Google also has the tower number somewhere.
I'll bet so.
Haven't looked at a chart supplement in a while, you might get it from there as well.
Yeah.
Probably at every airport there are hot spots, but I have this sinking feeling that towered airports have more hot spots than non-towered airports. So in that airport diagram, you really should document what you think your taxi instructions are going to be when you land. If you're a so-so pilot, you probably know what way you're going to land that day, based on the current winds. you probably know where you want to go at that airport, and it wouldn't be too difficult to highlight the route that you think you're going to take.
Yeah.
Especially in GA, there's not going to be a taxiway that's not going to allow the weight of your traffic to go on it, so you're going to be able to find that out. And if they tell you something different, when you exit the runway, take your time to draw that out and make sure you know how to go where you want to go on that airport diagram. But pay attention to the hot spots that you're going to go through, especially if it's your first time ever being there.
Yeah.
There's a reason that amberish brown looking circle is around that intersection. At this airport, we literally have 6 hot spots. And I can tell you that I think I've seen either people come really close or hit each other in all of those 6 spots, because it's just a lot of congestion coming together in those hot spots.
Yeah, and even with the airlines, I mean, that's part of our required approach briefing is expected runway, exit point, and taxi plan. And we may say I'm expecting to exit at Golf 7, and we'll expect to hold short of 3-5 left, and we're going to expect to go Golf to Delta to Bravo to gate 47. So that's part of our brief. We do that every time.
And I'm sure you don't always get what you expect.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a guess at that point. And if you're familiar with the airport, more times than not, you're probably right. But sometimes they give you weird things.
So the hotspots are key, and then once you're at a Towered airport, assuming you've only been there once and this is new to you, or you don't go very often, you got to get out of there, right? So a little bit different operations probably than when you've been used to a non-Towered airport. You're on the ground. I would do the same thing we talked about from the initial call in the air, right?
Right.
But if that airport has a ground controller, which most Towered airports probably have a ground control, you would contact ground and then do the same thing. Tell them who you are, where you are. You're actually telling them who you're talking to, then who you are, where you are, and what you want to do. And that's just take off. I'm ready for departure.
Yeah.
They might ask if you need a run-up. You might tell them you need a run-up. They'll tell you where you do those run-ups. And then they'll tell you how to taxi and get off the airfield for them as well.
Yeah. And I will say this, don't get wrapped around too much about the name of the tower. I mean, you may see the airport looks like it's Amsterdam Airport, but everybody calls it Schiphol, or Angelina County, Lufkin. If you're not quite sure, just say ground. Ground control, Cessna 123 Bravo Charlie. At the flight school, we'd like to taxi for takeoff, VFR to the north, with information Bravo.
The next part of the process here is we've now landed and we've taxied and we're trying to get off depart the airfield. The document has some really good little acronyms that I haven't seen before that I think we're going to share with you. The first one is for departures. The acronym or the word to think of is proceed. You want to plan, radios, organize, clearance, exercise caution, expedite, and depart. Probably not something you're going to memorize, but if you follow these steps every time about planning the route that you're going to take on the ground, get your radios tuned correctly, get things organized in the cockpit before you start rolling, get the ATIS, get the weather, get your clearance from ground to go, exercise extreme caution in all of those hotspot areas, and then don't mess around. Expedite your taxi and departure. Call the tower when you're number one to go and get off the airfield. That's the ultimate goal, and that's what we're all trying to do.
And I like how it has expedite. Notice it doesn't say rush. It says expedite. I see this a lot on check rides where the applicant will call for a taxi clearance, and we'll get taxi instructions, taxi here and go do this or whatever. And then we sit there for another 3 or 4 minutes. And some places you're out of sight of the tower, but they already told you to taxi. they're kind of expecting you to come out of that taxiway that they just gave you clearance for.
Yeah, here they'll ask if you're coming or not. Sometimes, again, if there's a long delay, we're 4 hangars deep, and when we ask for clearance to taxi, they're expecting us to pop out between two hangars about 30 seconds later, right? And there's a lot of cross traffic down there at that intersection, so they may be holding company traffic short, waiting on us to get clear. And if we don't come out, that could be a real problem for sure. The other part about expediting is, you may have to cross a runway. And so if they give you clearance to taxi and go across a runway, they're not expecting that to be something that happens 6 minutes from now. That clearance is an immediate clearance.
Right.
And they don't want you to hesitate or wait a while or write down a bunch of stuff at that point. You need to get across that runway and move forward and move on.
Yeah.
Every airport probably in the country has some non-standard procedures that maybe the locals know that the non-locals don't know. This airport probably is the quintessential of those airports with all of the unique things. We have something called the triangle that if I can assure you will never find the triangle in the FAR or the AIM or the PHAC or any other book because there's only one triangle. And it's literally labeled the triangle. It's just a place where three intersecting taxiways come together, and they've just filled in that concrete, and it's kind of become a place where people park and do run-ups and other things, and it's one of the worst hot spots probably in America.
Yeah.
But everyone knows about the triangle. Everyone knows where the triangle's at, and they use the terminology as if it was an intersection almost, right? A defined intersection. So every airport probably has stuff like this. You just have to use caution if you don't know the terminology or if it's non-standard. Ask for help. Ask for progressive taxi instructions maybe. That's what a tower's there for. They're there to help and assist you get through a situation that you might not be familiar with, especially when it's non-standard procedural type stuff. Before we started recording, we were talking about at this airport, a lot of people talk about something called the movement area and the non-movement area. Both areas you move a lot in, by the way. It's not like you don't move in one, you move in the other. But it's really what's truly being managed by the tower and what's truly not being controlled and managed by the tower. So lots of private property on and around this airport that has access to the airport, including this flight school. And you don't really have to have clearance to taxi on some of these quote-unquote non-movement taxiways that are privately owned. But it is common courtesy, and most of us around here know it's common courtesy, that you would let people know on the radio that you're moving and in transit between something and something else. And the tower just kind of helps that flow of traffic. So very, very non-standard operations at this field that would be extremely unique if you were to fly in here and think you're being controlled by the tower and you're in a quote-unquote non-movement area.
And that's not just a little airport thing. I can remember flying in and out of Atlanta Hartsfield International Airport, which is one of the busiest airports in the world. They basically have 4 east-west runways, 2 on the north side of the terminal complex and 2 on the south side. And for years they had it's still there. There were taxiways connecting the north 2 runways to the south 2 runways. And for years they referred to that main taxiway, that north-south taxiway, as the 50-yard line. I think anybody familiar with American football would you just kind of go, oh, that must be what they're talking about here. It wasn't labeled that way, but taxi to runway 8 left on taxiway Bravo, hold short of the 50-yard line. Okay, you just kind of, oh, that must be here. That has since changed. They don't call it the 50-yard line anymore, so I wonder what happened if
something bumped into something.
Yeah, a foreign airliner where the phrase 50-yard line didn't mean a whole lot to them.
Yeah, and that takes us to really a big topic, and actually our topic next week. So a little preview. If you tune in next week, we're going to be talking about runway incursions, and it's a big deal. And at this airport, there's been a lot of them. They've actually ranked really high in the country for runway incursions because they've just had too many of them. I think upwards in the top 5, maybe even had the number 1 spot for a while for GA airports. And a runway incursion doesn't mean that things have to hit each other or bend an aircraft. It just simply can be someone walking in one of those controlled areas that they shouldn't be walking in. And we've had a guest at this airport in my flight school that wanted to see their son take off, and they just walked out a little farther than they should have and found themselves on a active taxiway, and it became a runway incursion. We've also had people with some awkward markings in the way that the triangle feeds into a taxiway that kind of feeds into a runway, where they roll just past the whole short line. And they were the words I've heard were they were looking at the signage, not the whole short line. And the signage, it's one of those things where maybe the stop sign's a little further away than the white line.
Right.
And they just got a little bit over it. But, you roll over a whole short line when you're not clear, runway incursion.
Yeah.
If you've listened to this show for the last couple of years, hopefully you've listened to my episode about my near miss at this airport, where I was on the go, cleared for takeoff, and a helicopter landed less than 100 feet in front of me right as I rotated. Shocking scenario. I think that's episode number 2 on our list.
Yeah.
If you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen to it. Probably the most scary moment I've ever had in an aircraft. And obviously lived through it to talk about it, but there should have been 4 grown men dead that day. We got through that by the hair on our chinny chin. So runway incursions are something very important that if everybody in the airport environment aren't doing their part to prevent it, it's going to sneak up and bite us. And it might not just be bent metal. It might be really, really hurt people. So please pay attention when you're in the airport environment. The acronym we just shared was about departures, and that was proceed again. And arrivals, they actually use the word arrival, and that's get ATIS, which I really like that one. I use ABC when I'm briefing things. So ATIS, review, study the airport diagram. Radios, preset all the frequencies you'll need. Inbound, turn on your lights within 5 or 10 miles. I like that to make sure you're visible. People leaving can see you better. Do a visual check of the traffic as you approach the airport. You're going to know of or feel or see a flow of some sort. Arrival, do your before landing checklist, and then landing, clear the runway ASAP, which is obviously a good thing to do. I'll never forget when I was a rookie learning how to fly, I wasn't ASAP. I was slow to exit one time, and I think a King Air had to go around, and my instructor was like, "You just cost somebody like $300." And I was like, "What? What does that mean? He gets the pilots get penalized for going around or something?" And he goes, "No, that's a lot of gas that guy's burning to go fly around for 20 extra miles that he didn't have to fly around." So you might save somebody some money if you let them land behind you instead of them going around, for sure.
Yeah.
The tower. And we've met a lot of tower. We know a lot of tower people. We're gonna do our best to get a few tower people on the show real soon. We've had some controllers, but they've been more center and the local area controllers. But we'll get some tower people in there. The tower people really want to help. They are very kind people. They would tell you that they know you're afraid of them. They know we're afraid of them at times.
Yeah.
But they're there to help. They are very service-oriented people. And they know they're human too, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
They know they're going to make mistakes.
Yeah, and I would say this. I mean, we have all heard the tower controller kind of get a little chippy.
If you haven't, there's a good YouTube video.
Yeah,
Just look.
Yeah, and I would say I've been yelled at. I've been yelled at by controllers before, and a lot of times it was justified. Sometimes maybe not so much, but it really doesn't serve anybody any good to get back in their face and start going back and forth with each other. So you have to swallow your pride a little bit, but if they yell at you, just say okay, all right. and they usually calm down real quick when they realize that you're not going to get too, it's kind of like road rage. The guy, cuts you off and gives you the middle finger. Probably better for everybody involved to just sit there and take it.
Yeah, in Texas, you might get shot for something
Yeah,
like that.
absolutely.
Yeah, they really do care. They're very service-oriented. They want to help you be successful. They want to make sure no one gets hurt. So keep that in mind if you hear one of them with a little tone. Well, they're human. They could have bad days. They could have trouble at home this week. Their kids could be driving them nuts. You never know. Just give them a little bit of breathing room. To that point, they're also going to do things that you may not be familiar with at your non-controlled airport. So we talked about this a few weeks ago, Wally. What if they told me I'm coming into land? They say, we are amending your landing clearance. You're no longer clear to land. Just do a low approach. Well, if I've only ever been at a non-towered airport, that may be confusing to me. That may be something I've never even heard of before. What would you do, Wally, if you're a private pilot flying along, coming to a towered airport, you're over or approaching runway 17. There's only one. We'll just call it 17. You're just approaching 17, and they say, you're no longer clear to land. Cancel clearance to land. Do a low approach. And you're 600 feet in the air about to land.
Well, knowing where I am with my experience level, I would treat it as almost like an ILS approach. What I would do is I would fly it down to a couple of 100 feet, and I'd fly down the runway, and at at midpoint of the runway, I would start a climb and start my missed approach procedure. If it's not technically a missed approach, but at that point, proceed to take off and re-enter the traffic pattern. Where we see that around here is, airplanes in the traffic pattern. I can't say I've ever heard them give that to an airplane that's just coming in to land. Now, they may send you around at the last minute if maybe somebody doesn't clear the runway. But so we'll hear that from, that clearance given to traffic pattern airplanes here at this airport. Not a whole lot, but occasionally there's some reason why they can't have you on the runway. It may be something as simple as mowers or a fuel truck that needs to cross the runway, and you're already in this sequence, and they really can't get you out of the sequence.
Yeah, because turning around a half mile short might not be a good choice either, right?
Right.
You got to keep that flow kind of moving.
Right.
Another one that you may not be familiar with, but is well documented, I believe, is the option. You might say I'm coming in to land from 10 miles, 15 miles out, but when you get close to landing, they might read your call sign back and say cleared for the option. Again, you don't hear that if you're at a towered airport or a non-towered airport. They're giving you the option to do really anything you want to do within the realm of landing. So you can do a touch and go, you could do a full stop and go, or you can take the runway and then exit the runway to a full stop, right? So
Right.
That might be new to you. If you get the option, just know that you can do a stop and go, a full stop, or a touch and go. We believe that it's nice to tell them what your intentions are if your intentions are to make it a full stop. And that's just because they might be expecting you to do a touch and go. They might have forgot you said I'm coming in to land.
Right.
You might be the 15th airplane they've talked to in the last 7 minutes.
Yeah.
So if they say cleared for the option, Roger, I'm going to make this a full stop.
Right.
Might be a good piece of information for them to have, because they might not really mean the option.
Yeah, and consequently, if they clear you to do something that you don't want to do, you need to let them know. If you want a touch and go and they clear you to land, let them know. Hey, we're requesting a touch and go.
Well, that could be a runway incursion depending on the situation there too, right? Because if they say you are cleared to land,
yeah,
and then you take back off,
yeah,
that is a real problem as well.
Right.
So make sure you know the instruction and that you abide by that instruction as well. I think I briefly mentioned a while ago, but another tool that's in your tool bag at a towered airport truly is progressive taxi instructions. Very rare that I hear them around here. Pretty simple environment in the grand scheme of things, and a lot of home-based traffic in this area. But if you get lost, if I was at Atlanta, as Wally said, and they told me to hold short the 50-yard line, I'd probably be requesting some progressive taxi instructions.
Yeah.
Because I don't know it, it's not documented, and I'm not going to be the guy who gets a call from the FAA for a runway incursion for sure. So I think I've heard it on YouTube a few times. I've seen it in action or heard it at other airports. It's not something that is bad or illegal or going to go against you. So if you need the help, ask for the help. The results are going to be much, much better than what you might get if you don't ask for them, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last thing, and then I think I'll wrap up my part, Wally, is I would assume with control tower, we have bigger aircraft, which means we probably have more sophisticated lighting systems. So we won't go into all the lighting systems. Maybe we'll do that in a future show. But you probably have a landing light configuration, either a VASI or a PAPI. You probably have something going on there.
Yeah.
And you probably have some end of runway lighting. Conroe has got a lot more lights than here. Lots of stuff going on at that airport to help, I think, IMC traffic coming in. But know the lighting system, know how it will help you or hurt you. I mean, some airports have 3 lines on the runway. Some only have 2.
Yeah.
It could be really confusing if they have 2 runways right next to each other and you see 4 lights instead of you're expecting 3 lights. I mean, probably just something to consider if you're coming in at night for the first time to a towered airport that has lights that may not match what you're thinking they're going to have when you get here.
Yeah.
Because it's a big deal. Tower, in all the cases that I'm aware of, the tower controls the light, the power of the lights, strong, medium, soft light.
Intensity.
That's the word I'm looking for. Unless the tower's closed and it becomes pilot-controlled lighting, that too is something you should be able to find in the chart supplement and be able to know. I've been known to try and demonstrate the pilot-controlled lighting while the tower's open, and they just calmly remind me, we're still in control, sir, for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But I was trying to demo it and wasn't thinking, and kind of made a fool of myself. I was the only plane, so they knew it was me.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story about one of our local airports, uncontrolled airports. In the middle of a check ride, we ended up doing a stop there because maybe somebody with my initials had to use the restroom, and I go to their little house or little building that they have, and to get in there you had to know the frequency for the pilot controlled lighting. So I'm running back to the airplane and pulling 4th light up on my iPad, and the applicant says, "What do you need?" I says, "I need the frequency for pilot controlled lighting," and he just had a very strange look on his face, and I got it and got in there and was able to do my business. So.
Would have been funny if he clicked it 3 times to try and unlock the door for you.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
All right, that's a lot of information about towered airports. We've now done an episode on non-towered and towered airports, so lots of good information between those 2 episodes. As always, share our show with a friend. Give us a 5-star rating if you don't mind, and we've earned it. Fly safely and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at BehindTheProp.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.